Just really quick, I wanted to remind y'all that the Games and Online Harassment Hotline is here for you, for your friends and your colleagues. We provide emotional support to folks who make or play games, which is such a broad range of people. So, you know, you might not need it today, but maybe you need it tomorrow. So we just want you to know about it. You can learn more at gameshotline.org.
The fact that this man has not crawled onto a rock and pulled that rock over himself and just asked to be forgotten. The fact that he has the nerve to be putting out that Christmas video every year. We can't get rid of these guys. They are a fungus. They are a plague.
Yeah, don't talk like that about fungus. Welcome to Feminist Frequency Radio. This is the show that asks you to be critical of the media you love. I'm Anita Sarkeesian, and I'm joined today by two women who've just been cast in a remake of Murder, She Wrote. Carolyn Pettit.
Well, first of all, that's literally the name of the show, Murder, She Wrote, and that is the only remake we actually need.
Murder, She Wrote.
Ebony Adams. Would you like a hot take in the intro?
No, I'm just into it. And if Carol lets me be the Tom Bosley to her Jessica Fletcher, her Angela Lansbury, I'm into this.
Absolutely.
I would.
Cabot Cove awaits, Ebony. Cabot Cove awaits.
How much money would you need to do that as a an audio program?
Ooh,
like the two of you doing a Murder, She Wrote audio program.
It would not have to be a huge amount of money at all. Just a regular amount of money, and I'd be way into it.
And,
all right, folks, you heard it. You heard it here.
Old-timey radio dramas and stuff were, with the way they would work in like sound effects and music and everything. Very, very cool. Murder, She Wrote would work really well as an audio drama. Good thinking there, Anita. I like it.
I got lots of ideas, which are totally useless most of the time. It's fine. This week on this show, we will not be talking about all of the ideas we can't afford. Rather, we will be talking about entertainment news and pop culture. So stay tuned. All right, hello. Hi, hello.
Hey.
So, we did a thing this weekend.
Yeah, you did.
We did a big-ass 26-hour live stream to support Feminist Frequency and the Games and Online Harassment Hotline. And it was enormously successful. And, well, it was like normal successful, you know? we gotta just be right. We hit our fundraising goal, which is wonderful and amazing. Folks really came through, and I think
what was enormous. I mean, first of all, that in and of itself is definitely something to celebrate. But also, so the viewers, the supporters, showing up and pitching in. But we can also say it was enormously successful in the sense of the amazing folks who turned out to help out and to be part of the stream, to stream with and for us. Folks like the Fun City podcast, help me out here, Anita.
I literally just was like, I should help Carolyn, but I'm kind of enjoying watching her.
No, her brain is baked from the 26-hour live stream.
Also, Carolyn didn't organize the whole thing, so I don't expect her to know everybody. We had on the lovely Carolyn Pettit doing some late night retro gaming.
Sure. The great folks from Desert Bus.
Yep, the Desert Bus folks. We had Bijan Steven. Yep. We had the Latinx in Gaming.
Cypher of Tier.
Sorry?
Wasn't Cypher of Tier our friend Tanya?
Yeah, Tanya DePass. Yep.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of really great folks. I think it was, this live stream was one of those things that I was like, oh, well, let's organize it this way. It'll be easy. Of course it's not. It was like an enormous amount of work to put together. And I am just so delighted that it kind of went off without a hitch. There's technical problems that happen with any live stream, but everyone showed up. Everyone was prepared, did their thing. And I don't know, man. I was very proud of the whole team and everyone for putting such a huge thing together to celebrate it. And also, reminder, it was a celebration of Feminist Frequency's 12th birthday.
Right.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
So fun story.
It better
I have
be.
a friend who's not exactly as the internet would call woke. Getting there over time, but still, whatever. And she messaged me being like, I'm watching a bunch of Manic Pixie Dream Girl movies because I'm sad. Do you want to watch any of them with me? And I was like, no. Like, I don't really like them. And she was like, do you know what the Manic Pixie Dream Girl is? Like, it's this trope that da-da-da. I was like, okay, yes, I am familiar with this trope. And I sent her my video to be like, I made a video about this.
Yeah.
And then she's like, oh, great, I added more movies to my list.
That's amazing.
It was pretty special. And anyways, I was thinking about how when I pulled that link up, the video up to send to her, it was so fucking old. Like I was like, this might be a little bit embarrassing, but I know the content is still good, you know? So 12 years, man.
But you know what? We should definitely do an episode on that trope, because I have a sense that the type of character has not gone away, but the set dressing around that type of character has sufficiently changed that to many people it would be fairly unrecognizable. But I do think that like there was a particular period, you know, like 90s, 2000s, you know, when that was the shit.
Oh, yeah.
Like they were just everywhere, right?
Yep. Elizabethtown and
500 Days of Summer, Eternal Sunshine.
Yeah.
Basically everything that What's Her Face did for a while.
Kristen Dunst or
yes, and the other one.
Oh, Zooey Deschanel?
Yes, her.
Yeah.
And the other one.
Kate Winslet.
No, not Kate Winslet. The one that was in Garden State.
Natalie Portman. Yeah.
When Natalie Portman was younger, she did a lot of those. Or she,
because those were the roles that were out there, because that's what the male filmmakers who had the power to get, you know, that's what fucking Zach Braffs of the world were writing, right? We're turning out and directing and had funding for. So, yeah.
I think, Ebony, it would be really interesting to do. If somebody else wants to do this, that would be great. Like, what does this trope look like today? Because, it probably hasn't gone away, but in the same way that we still see old tropes rear its ugly head, but like it's commented on, or like it's a little bit softer, but it's still present, you know?
I mean, many people argue, I've never actually even seen the 500 Days of Summer. Like, many people argue that, like, you know, Joseph Gordon-Levitt is straight up like the kind of, not villain, maybe too strong a word, but like that it is doing that. But I don't know if that's actually true or not.
Yeah, I could see that argument. I haven't seen it since like I made that video before 2011. I think I made it.
Yeah.
So I hadn't seen it in that long of a time. But there is a little bit of like he's manufacturing a memory of this woman. So like, what is the line between doing it?
Yes.
And critiquing it.
And
right?
that's so often the question that I think we wrestle with here at Feminist Frequency Radio, right?
I watched a really interesting short the other day. It was interesting enough. It was a short, and there's like these ghosts in this guy's brain that are just his friends hanging out around him, or people like who had died in this house. And one of them was like a white dude wearing a full like, you know, Indian headdress kind of thing. And I was like, what is this racist shit? And so like partway through the short, they acknowledge that like he died at a Halloween party, and he's like, I wasn't even the most racist one there. And I'm like, I don't think this justifies the existence of using this. Like it's not like enough, or it's not like you just like wanted to use it and then justified using it, or thought you could make a joke about how like you recognize it. I don't know. I think it can be tough, you know, like for creators to figure out like how to navigate some of this terrain. But
yeah, I will say that before we move on, you know, whether Manic Pixie Dream Girls are still populating our media, that I just saw a pitch for something, and without like calling anybody out by name, the story is about two older guys from disparate backgrounds. And when I say older, I mean like 65 and 75, excuse me. And those are the main characters. But the third sort of character that revolves around them is a 20-something waitress. And it is it's precisely the kind of character that you would imagine. And I'm like, the ways in which that particular version of like an emotional dream fairy, you know, is the engine by which like men come to like greater intimacy or understanding of themselves is gross. Get rid of it.
Gross. Is it mainstream? Is this a mainstream thing?
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, at least we can take comfort in that, I guess. All right. Well, why don't we get into entertainment news where we'll have more things to talk about? All right. Once again, we're bringing you a crop of pop culture news that's designed to make you bury your head in the nearest pillow and scream. From uncancelable sexual offenders to the latest string of reboots, remakes, and retreads, we're here to talk about the things that are keeping our group chats popping and our Twitter feeds unbearable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ebony, would you like to get us started with Everything Old is New Again?
Yes. Okay. I have warm-ish feelings for Timothée Chalamet. I won't get into Caro's movie, but as a person, as an actor, I really enjoy him. But listen,
he's phenomenal. He's a phenomenal actor. Like
he really is, you know. But so today, on the day that we're recording this, which is Monday, May 24th, came the news that he has been cast as a young Willy Wonka in a new project that's going to be coming out. Y'all, we can film, we can write new stories, we can bankroll, we can promote new things. Not every villain or main character needs an origin story. We don't need to keep going back to the well and redoing things for generation upon generation. I am just blown away by the fact that our the creativity well seems to have dried completely up. Everything is a reboot, or it's just an extension of existing IP. Like, I'm honestly, what? Willy Wonka? How many more of these do we need to do?
Yeah, this news in particular, I mean, I just don't see Wonka as, first of all, it's not a brand or like an IP that I feel like there's that many people today clamoring for, like,
right?
Another Wonka movie. And like, when you do bring up Wonka as a character, at least as my Twitter feed and what's trending on Twitter today seems to be demonstrating, there is no escaping the comparisons to Gene Wilder, who is considered like, definitive and like impeccable. And like, we don't need, like, that's it. You want Wonka on screen, just watch that film starring Gene Wilder, and yeah. So, I mean, it's like, Timothée Chalamet to me is a terrifically exciting young actor. I do find him incredibly compelling, but I would much rather like him get roles in things that are fresh and original and that are not like a resurrection of a property
but
that I
Carolyn,
don't think. Yes.
What you're not understanding, let me explain to you.
Okay.
The business
Yeah.
is that executives aren't going to make any money if you go watch the original movie. You see? So like, you got to go watch the new movie so that the executives can make the money on the new one. You get it? Capitalism?
Here's the thing, though, is that it is an incredibly complicated sort of like algebra that happens with the way things get greenlit, right? So they do make money on the old one, but the way that they make money is by putting it on these streaming services, which we pay for, monthly. But then also, even the conversation about Timothée Chalamet being cast in this role provokes a cultural conversation that encourages people to go check out the old one, and there's going to be the people who check out the new one, even if it's just to hate watch. Like, at some level, like, there's so many dollar signs, no matter what the configuration of the audience reaction is going to be for this thing. And that's apart from merchandising and licensing and everything else that goes into this. And I mean, I get it. Like, there's a certain dopamine hit you get when something that you remember fondly from your childhood sort of reestablishes itself in the present. But that should not be the metric by which we determine whether something should be redone or not. And I find it interesting, Anita, you mentioned like Gene Wilder as the definitive Willy Wonka.
I did not. Carolyn did.
Oh, Carol, right. So, but I mean, like, what's hilarious about that is that you didn't even mention Johnny Depp. Like, we've already had another Wonka movie. And
like, nobody, people may go back
care.
and watch the Gene Wilder one again. Nobody's going to go back and watch the Johnny Depp,
Yeah, so one. Like, we don't need this. There are other like amazing, cool, fantastical, wondrous, bubblegum candy paint characters that Timothée Chalamet could play. It does not have to be Willy Wonka.
I mean, there are so many Marvel characters who haven't yet gotten on the big screen,
Oh my God, Carolyn. That's a good one.
Everything is connected to the MCU. Everything.
Yes.
Yeah, well, and this isn't like so there are more examples of like things that are being announced right now too.
Yeah, I mean, there's so one that I took particular note of is that there's apparently in the early stages of planning or whatever pre-production is a reboot, presumably of the Highlander series, starring Henry Cavill. So now Highlander, interestingly, I believe was it the first film you and I did for Cinema Ball?
Oh yes, Ebony? Carolyn.
Yeah, so Ebony and I used to have a little side podcast on the FFR network called Cinema Ball where we discuss Highlander. Anyway, Highlander, I mean, I actually don't hate the idea of Highlander being resurrected because I feel like it's kind of this cult thing as opposed to this like big mainstream thing, and I do think it's a really interesting property that if done with like character and with like personality, like could lead to some interesting new films as well. However, for me personally, so the original Highlander, the character, the title character, the main character, was played by Christopher Lambert. And I mean, sorry, Christopher, not like an amazing actor, but a very soulful actor and an actor with like a very distinctive style of like intense emotion. And I just don't see Henry Cavill. I think Henry Cavill can do the like wooden decency of Superman fairly okay, like, stand with his hands on his hips and like look up at the horizon and whatever. But I don't see him having like the passion that I want in a Highlander.
Are you saying that Henry Cavill is not passionate as the Witcher, Carol?
Yeah. But I think Geralt, interestingly, may be a good role for Henry Cavill because he's like, by design, he doesn't feel that much, right? Whereas the Highlander character, at least in the original, like, is it Connor MacLeod, is like, feels things so deeply and he's so intense and it's fantastic. Anyway, yeah, so there's that one. That's my take on the Highlander news.
I think whoever is on Henry Cavill's like publicity team, his management team, they're like, listen, this dude, we're putting him in franchise ready projects and that's it. Superman, Witcher, Highlander, the Sherlock Holmes series on like, we don't want him to be doing anything that doesn't have the potential to have a sequel, a next season, a follow-up, whatever. And I mean, there's so many of these that he can like seamlessly slot himself into. I do think he can be great, as Carol says, with like the kind of brooding menace, perhaps a hidden, a hidden softness that never actually makes its way to the surface and makes itself visible. But yeah, when it comes to a character like Connor MacLeod, a man who was supposed to let you see the weight of his long years on him, I just don't see it. God bless you, Henry Cavill, but I don't know that you have the range,
no blessing Henry Cavill. I will not stand for that.
I mean it more in the Southern sense of like, bless your heart, Henry Cavill. So, but yeah, in this category of Henry Cavill playing the Highlander, Timothée Chalamet playing Willy Wonka, I also wanted to mention the new Cruella de Vil movie coming out with Emma Stone. Yeah. And I feel like, man, just from the art direction alone, I'm sure I'm going to see this shit. But again, did we need it? I don't know.
So, I mean, here's my thing about that one is that, like, I think it's, I'm not, whatever. I'm not excited about it. I don't care. It does seem very like let's capitalize on, this character who's in our IP, Disney, like in our IP and like spin off and do. But it's every bit as legit as, say, something like Joker, right? I mean, which in terms of its like unnecessary origin story-ness. And I feel like there's maybe a little bit of kind of misogyny in some of the reactions to this, of like it being particularly lambasted as like by people dismissing it, where it's like, I mean, who cares? It's very corporate. It's very unnecessary, but Emma Stone it's sort of like, I think again, like I think Emma Stone is a tremendous actor. And it's probably a fun role for her maybe, and she might be great in it. I don't know. I'm like, I don't care about it, but I also feel like you can't single this one out for particular sort of wrath in the landscape that gave us films like say Joker, right?
No, I think it is precisely because it is part of that landscape that I'm not angry, but I am, weary of it, because there are a finite amount of things that come out every year.
Oh, yeah.
And
absolutely.
the reality is, I mean, even if everything is, a reboot or a remake or whatever, the other thing to consider is that it is not like new writers, new directors who are being handed these things. It's people who have already established themselves in the industry, typically. And so there's no point of entry for newness, for diversity of thought, diversity of vision, and the more of these we make and the more money they make, excuse me, the more we continue to churn them out, such that, we will have a never-ending stream of things tangentially related to the Star Wars universe, the Marvel's, cinematic universe, the Star Trek universe. And I enjoy all of these things, but there is a paucity of, just diversity on screen and available to us, such that, like,
yes.
if you want to see something different, but it simply does not exist, you see what's at the multiplex, you see what's streaming, you see what's available. It's just, we can do more, people. We can do more.
Oh, so yes. Yes.
I am going to lower the quality of this conversation immediately. But I have no interest in this movie, but I'm sure I'm gonna watch it because the costumes look fucking amazing.
Oh yeah.
I hate that because I'm like, I'm not into this at all. I don't think it's gonna be interesting. But I agree. Just watching the trailer, I'm like, Emma Stone must have had a fucking delight, right, to play this really wacky character and the costuming and everything. But also do we really need to humanize this woman that murders puppies? I don't know.
But again, that's precisely why I think Joker is such a good comparison, right? Because Joker is in the Batman mythos, this murderous psychopath, and the film 100% makes your heart kind of break for him, right?
Yeah, totally. No, I think I did, that did not occur to me, and I think it's a really astute observation, Carolyn. I think there's also something in addition to it being about misogyny or sexism or just sort of patriarchy in the air is around the seriousness of superheroes versus the not, or the childishness of Disney, right? It's hard. It can be harder to take this as seriously as people take Joker because it's
so true,
and it's
very
so manly,
exactly. And there's that direct correlation there to, I think, as we've talked about in the past, to what we sometimes see in pop music, right? Where Taylor Swift, a hugely successful, obviously making money hand over fist, there's whatever, she's dominates the airwaves, she's whatever, but in terms of what the critical establishment and even what a lot of particularly male listeners and in the cultural just sphere, how they view it and talk about it is it's not serious music because it's Taylor Swift. Oh, but again, when Ryan Adams does his song for song cover album of the Taylor Swift record, it's now this record is high art. Ryan Adams found the depth and the nuance in Taylor Swift songs that she herself couldn't, fucking reveal.
Every time Ryan Adams comes up, I have to take a minute and be like, not Bryan Adams,
not
the
right.
singer, songwriter, star, Canadian star. I don't.
Yeah. They're because you default to Canadian references. Gotcha.
I know that we've talked we've definitely rolled our eyes a lot at remakes over the years, and just this cycle of everything needs to be familiar because it will be more popular. We want to make as much money as possible. Therefore, let's get things that people are already familiar with. And I'm sure there's loads of studies that they've done to prove that is a viable, financial, successful strategy for them. But I do wonder, are we exhausted with nostalgic remakes because it's like something like it's happening more and more because it's not new, right? And I was wondering about like, is it because we are now old enough to remember the originals? Because things like, 12 Angry Men and Ocean's 11 and Italian Job. I don't know why I'm talking about heist movies, but like those are all remakes, right? But those were remakes that I didn't even know were remakes when I watched the originals.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, this feels like the second time in my awareness of going through this exact same thing, because there was a period where there were so many remakes, you had like Starsky and Hutch and like, I don't know, whatever, like just so many kind of, and like the Dukes of Hazzard and like all these movies that were like based on like these B tier, and that may be too kind, like 70s and 80s, like TV shows and whatever.
But I don't think there were also a period good of time. It's like, but they made a Bionic Commando TV show with I forget who's in it. But I feel like they've just always done this.
Sure,
like,
I mean, well, yes and no. I mean, and not all remakes are created equal. I mean, The Fugitive with Harrison Ford is an update, is like a quote unquote not exactly a remake, but it's a reboot or a retelling of an old television series. And that
Star is Born has been made 3 times.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, yeah, like there are, I don't know, like there are remakes and then there are remakes, right? If you're just kind of like capitalizing on nostalgia, that's one thing. I mean, I think, but then you have like a film like The Departed by Martin Scorsese, which you can love it or hate it, but like that's a remake of a film of like I want to say, I don't remember if it's like a Hong Kong film or what have you, but like that really does a lot of work, like resituating it in like Boston and like totally kind of all making Scorsese-ifying it so that it's like categorically a different film while also being the same story in a lot of ways. And I think that's like there's something interesting about that. So yeah, it's like.
Well, I was going to say, there's also the other like piece of this in relation to what you're talking about. Like, how do you like it's not remakes in and of themselves aren't the problem. It's that when they're made sort of with hollow financial purposes as opposed to creative purposes.
Yeah.
But I think this is also related to like how movies get picked by studios. Like if it's based on a book, it's going to have a much higher likelihood of getting picked up because it's already shown a proof of concept, right? And anytime I've talked to anyone, that's like what they've said is like, if it's based on something that already existed, you're going to have a higher chance of making it. And so it's just like, it's like this fear of taking a chance on things that are new or like not being able to find the audience for it or what have you. And I think that's, all kind of related here,
Absolutely. I do think there simply are a greater number of these reboots happening now. Like that's just a fact. They take a much greater percentage of the media output that we're seeing. But I also do think that this makes me sound like the crabbiest old get off my lawn lady. But I do think, that, I am 87. When I think of some of my favorite movies, they are remakes. So The Thing or The Fly, right? But there was, a sense of distance from the original.
And those directors putting their own very distinctive imprint on, like what Cronenberg does with The Fly, like, again, like sort of what I was saying about with The Departed, like he Cronenbergifies the hell out of that movie, right? It is, yeah.
Yeah, like we're not talking about, and as much as Steven Soderbergh be getting on my nerves lately, we're not talking about like Steven Soderbergh, just doing like a workaday kind of remake of Ocean's 11. It's what you're saying. Like we're talking about directors who want to take a chance on something and who are seeing like fresh new opportunities in a text versus the sort of like just glamorizing of things like, oh, let's just put, a cool soundtrack behind this and really bright colors and bisexual lighting and, give somebody a sad origin story. And that's all the work that we've done. And it's very, like paint by numbers.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Yeah,
Carolyn,
let's move on.
You would like to talk about the world is on fire and we can't stop talking and we can't talk about it.
Sure. So I'll talk a bit about something that happened recently with the gaming website IGN, one of the the old guard gaming websites, very well established, but certainly a site that has evolved a lot in, I would say, recent years, and is definitely, like, you have a lot of folks there who are very conscientious and who really are making an effort to do good work, and and they do good work. And so IGN, the editorial staff at IGN posted a brief statement with links recently, sort of very similar to what they've done in the past with other issues, like, I think, with around, say, Black Lives Matter, and around the recent spate of anti-Asian hate crimes and things like that. This one expressing deep concern about the violence and the death being visited upon Palestinians by Israel, and with a link to charities that people can and being encouraging people to donate to support Palestinian citizens. Now, in the wake of that, a couple of things happened. IGN has these sites. I don't really fully understand the relationship, but there's IGN sort of sister sites or spin-off sites or in other parts of the world. And I don't know if they actually just have the IGN branding, or if they actually have direct communication and collaboration with the main IGN site, but there is an IGN Israel. And so in the wake of IGN publishing their statement, the first thing that happened was that IGN Israel released their own statement, and it said it said, and this is terrible, it said, "We at IGN Israel support the state of Israel, obviously, and support IDF soldiers who do everything to keep us all safe in these tough days. We work in every way possible to remove this misleading and offensive content from the American edition, which does not represent our views." But then, the real sort of violation of the editorial agency of the IGN staffers who had published the post encouraging people to donate to support Palestinians, was that the statement was sort of unilaterally taken down by IGN's corporate leadership, and they put out this very kind of equivocating statement that said, across IGN, our hearts are heavy as we follow the events in Israel, Palestine, and across the region. And at an all hands meeting, so Patrick Klepek at Waypoint did a deep dive story reporting on this. There was IGN's a head of IGN's corporate leadership kept using the term war to refer to what's happening there, and said we can't be perceived as taking sides in a war, which is such bullshit. And anyway, so many IGN staffers then published because their editorial agency had been totally overwritten and denied by IGN's corporate leadership. They posted a statement of their own to Medium, outside of IGN. It was signed by many IGN staffers, expressing their great frustration and anger with with those forces up in sort of corporate leadership that had made this decision, and just kind of without even any discussion or any had just kind of pulled their post and replaced it with this much more mealy-mouthed one that did not in any way show solidarity with or direct support for the people of Palestine who are living under the yoke of Israeli apartheid and oppression. So, I personally, I want to I sort of know what it is to be part of an editorial staff at a site that, that is frustrated by decisions that are made by corporate leadership. So I want to just express my own solidarity and support with the members of IGN's staff that have experienced that painful experience of having their because those things should be absolutely separate. Editorial, right. Corporate should not be able to meddle and interfere with that. in the way that they did here. It's a pure violation of like any kind of journalistic like integrity or ethics. And yet weirdly, the ethics and game journalism crowd doesn't seem to be making much of a stink about this. I don't know why. It's weird, right? It's weird. And, you know, and and also like many IGN staffers also, to their credit, have continued speaking out on like Twitter and saying like, I refuse to be silent about this. And, you know, like Brian Altano and, you know, many others continuing to promote, charities and resources and directing people to not view this as like a war between two equal sides, but rather to really understand that the Palestinian people are being oppressed and are living in under apartheid as imposed by Israel.
It is like there are very real costs even now when there's greater like mainstream support and discussion about the plight of the Palestinian people in the occupation. There's still a real cost, particularly here in the U.S., for journalists who, like a career cost for journalists who take a stand or who have taken a stand in the past. So one of the other things we wanted to mention is a young writer journalist named Emily Wilder, who had been hired by the AP, was still in her probationary phase, which means that when the college Republicans from Stanford, her alma mater, launched a concerted attack with the aid of people like Ben Shapiro against her for the activism that she took part in and the vocal support she had for Palestinian causes when she was in college. So not yesterday, not last week, but back when she was in college, based upon the notoriety that was kicked up around this, the AP let her go. And so you have, so many like journalistic organizations, making statements saying this is absolutely appalling. There's, we need to really talk about what we mean. If we say that like there's a social good for the press, but if the press can only report certain things and in a certain way, then what are we even doing here? And by the way, I should mention, we'll be sharing links to all of the stuff that we talk about in the show notes. And I encourage you to check out the story, but it's frightening. It is absolutely frightening. We're not talking about someone who, like committed a murder 10 years ago and it's just now coming to light,
Also,
like.
Irony is probably not the right word here, but the AP office in Israel, well, in
like Gaza,
is it in Gaza? Well, the Palestinian, there's a media building in one of the Palestinian areas that got bombed and like decimated, and one of them was the AP office.
Yeah, and the building contained AP and Al Jazeera offices, and apparently also Hamas. Clearly, obviously, like Hamas was like in there somewhere, I guess.
That of course, because they have to use that as the excuse. Yeah, it's really horrifying. Well, I actually think that this is a lovely transition to the next topic of like how quickly folks on like progressive folks are getting like fired or silenced or shut down for speaking up when white dudes seem to just keep bouncing back from their legitimate actual harm that they're causing.
Yeah, and before we go on, can I just mention Nicole Hannah-Jones and of the 1619 Project? Yes. The woman has a MacArthur Genius Grant. She is a Pulitzer Prize winner and yet was denied tenure at UNC. And it is absolutely, payback and retaliation from the arch conservative board of trustees and leadership at that school. There's no way that you can say this woman is not worthy of tenure at an elite school, at any school. This absolutely is payback. And so when it comes to like who's getting canceled, who's actually experiencing career ramifications, it seems like it's not the white dudes who are constantly complaining about it, which leads us into Mr. Kevin Spacey.
Oh,
y'all,
God.
The fact that this man has not crawled onto a rock and pulled that rock over himself and just asked to be forgotten, the fact that he has the nerve to be putting out that Christmas video every year, still trying to be like, hey, you know, like, can we bring Frank Underwood back? Can I still be you liked me once, right? He's been cast in a role, a new film. It's coming, but it's his first acting gig since the sexual assault allegations became public in around 2017. I hate to say it, the person directing the movie is, I believe his name is Francis Nero. You may remember him from John Wick 2. He played one of the manager of the Italian Continental, which now is going to color my viewing of that film. In what way do you...
You can do it, Ebony.
I can't, because I saw this and I legit thought it was a joke. I thought, if there's one person who has been successfully canceled, and whatever that means, it's Kevin Spacey. He will not be able to weasel his way back into the industry in any way, form, or fashion. And yet, here it is. We can't get rid of these guys. They are a fungus. They are a plague.
Yeah, don't talk like that about fungus.
All right,
I like mushrooms.
You're right. You know, just poisonous.
Yeah, and we see this pattern, you know, this pattern of like white men being truly like uncancelable so often, you know, elsewhere as well, in literary circles too. So there's a man named Blake Bailey who has written an authorized biography of Philip Roth. Now, Philip Roth is one of the titans of late 20th, early 21st century American, you know, novels and literature, though, you know, he himself, not exactly. I mean, the most enlightened white dude. I haven't read any Philip Roth. But you know, the way he portrays women and talks about sex is much discussed and debated. You know, some of his a later novel of his called The Human Stain is, you know, regarded among other things as being like a anti quote unquote political correctness novel. So, you know, obviously like, but anyway, so Blake Bailey wrote a biography about him, which was in early reviews by some like acclaimed, by others felt it sort of apologized for, or even maybe celebrated Philip Roth's like misogyny and you know, his behavior. But then it has been revealed, and there's an amazing Slate story that we will include in the show notes. So Blake Bailey formerly was a middle school teacher, and so teaching 8th grade students and 8th grade girls, and he did this thing where like he was beloved by many as a teacher because he seemed to respect the inner lives of his students and really engage with who they are as people. But the way he did this was through journals, which they wrote and kept, and which they wrote very personally about their lives. And he would respond in the journals, in the margins, and in his notes in a very, very personal way. And so in this way, he formed very kind of emotionally intimate connections with a lot of these, you know, 8th grade female students who, at least some of whom he did go on to, you know, sexually assault or abuse, or, you know, and there's at least one rape accusation against him. So the original publisher of the Philip Roth biography dropped it. However, it has now been picked up by Skyhorse Publishing, the same noble publishing house that also picked up Woody Allen's memoir after it was dropped by its original publisher. And I just want to read like one part of their statement. So Skyhorse Publishing's statement on their acquisition of the Blake Bailey biography of Philip Roth is this. They're quoting another group here, but I think this speaks for itself, and I think it's so revealing. They say in their statement, quote, "The answer to suppression of expression and ideas isn't greater or responsive suppression, but greater public debate, which is silenced when a publisher prevents readers from reading a book and forming their opinions. A book is larger than its author. It is in addition to the often contentious public record for posterity. Now, I just think this is so revealing of like so much of the thinking around this and why people like Blake Bailey and, Woody Allen and Kevin Spacey and what have you keep getting a pass, is because if you have the right face, the right voice, the right gender, the right race, then yes, you may be like just complicating things in this way that we need to engage with, because it adds to the richness and complexity of literature, of cinema, of whatever art form, by having your kind of, your misogyny or your like whatever it is, like a little dash of that in the mix it's just like some flavor, some seasoning in the mix. But how many people with the wrong, quote unquote, wrong race or gender, or, who are too queer, too trans, too female, too whatever it is, like never even get that like opportunity to contribute to the literary canon or the cinematic canon in the first place. Like, it's uncountable, unknowable how many people, because they weren't white men, have never even had that opportunity, and whose work was like disregarded or dismissed just on the basis of them not having the right kind of credentials baked into their DNA.
Yeah, the like desperation in the statements from these folks, as if we're running out of white men to celebrate, as if, we're going to be losing something, ineffable and, irretrievable by not publishing this book, by not watching this film, by not giving this guy, a job on the editorial staff. It's mind-blowing when Joe fucking Rogan, who is inescapable, has the nerve to say that woke culture is silencing white men like him. Boy, where? I can't turn around and not see you. You Seriously. Are a multi-millionaire, and you have the nerve to act as if some nebulous, community of trans and, brown woke scolds are stopping you from saying what you really want to be saying. It seems to me your ass is on your podcast 3 hours a day talking about what you want to be talking about and doing it for so much money and to huge audiences.
Yes. You got $100 million from Spotify.
The martyr complex, the insistence these men have that they are entitled to every portion of our cultural imagination is staggering to me. It is staggering to me.
Absolutely.
Can we just end this now?
Yeah.
I feel like that's a great way to end this. Fuck.
Yep.
Well said.
Yep.
Well said.
We'll be right back with Freakouts. Hey, are you enjoying the show? If you are, we would love you to support us to keep making it. If you become one of our patrons, not only are you going to do that and allow us to keep making this every week, but also you get access to some perks like bonus episodes, participate in polls to determine future episodes, access to our Discord server, which is only available to patrons, and, other things. If you love us, help support us. You can do that at patreon.com/femfreak.
Hey folks, Carolyn here. You may have noticed that on a recent episode, we got a little mixed up with our guest freakouts. What we did was we set up one guest freakout, we introduced one guest freakout, but then we actually played another guest freakout, the wrong guest freakout for you. We want to apologize to both Caitlin Grant, the host of the Plug It Up horror podcast, who sent the freakout that we meant to play, and to our listener, Katie, who sent the freakout that we actually did play. And what we're going to do this week is play both of those freakouts and set them up properly and give them the proper context and reactions. So thanks so much for your patience and understanding, and here you go. What's your freakout?
We have a very special guest freakout this week. We love when y'all send us freakouts. And I think this will be of interest to anyone who enjoys discussions around female-focused horror. So take a listen.
Hey, I'm Caitlin Grant. I'm a huge fan and have been for years. I'm so psyched you're covering Carrie. I wanted to mention that I have a horror podcast called Plug It Up, where I explore the monstrous menstruation trope in horror movies and TV. So monstrous menstruation is the trope in horror where a character gets their period and undergoes a monstrous transformation. So in Carrie, she gets her period, and by the end of the movie, she's telekinetically killing everyone at prom. In Ginger Snaps, Ginger gets her period and becomes a werewolf. I've had so much fun exploring what makes this trope so enduring, and why coming of age, especially for women, is depicted in such horrific ways sometimes. It's been a ton of fun. I've also done a lot of work on menstrual history and some anthropological research about menstruation. I'm a huge genre fan, I'm a huge feminist, and I'm a huge fan of Feminist Frequency and a fan of yours. So would love for you to check it out sometime. It's called Plug It Up, and you can find it on any podcast platform. And I'm Plug It Up Pod on Instagram and Twitter. Thanks again for all you do.
Thank you so much for that, Caitlin. Y'all should go check out the Plug It Up podcast if you are interested in this topic. Because, plug it up. I actually, Caitlin had reached out to me being like, hey, we're doing this thing. And I was like, oh, this is great timing. We're about to do the Carrie episode. And she's like, yeah, it's this Plug It Up podcast. And I was like, cool. And I did not connect the name of the podcast until I was watching Carrie and was like, oh, that's where it came from. Oh, smart. This week we are sharing a freak out from our listener, Katie from Los Angeles. Take a listen.
Hi, Anita, Carolyn, and Ebony. Thank you so much for everything you do. My name is Katie, longtime listener, first-time caller, and I just wanted to freak out today based on Anita's freak out from a few weeks ago where she was talking about Sidney Lumet's book, Making Movies. I started reading it and decided to start watching his movies, and so I just finished watching Dog Day Afternoon, and I was absolutely blown away by it. I think this will be a movie that I will keep thinking about for a while. It's such a unique piece, and I was just wondering if you guys had any thoughts on it, but anyway, thanks again, and that's my freak out. Bye.
I am so delighted that people ever listen to my freakouts, let alone actually engage with them. So that's great. I'm really stoked. This book is really lovely, and I have the exact same feeling of like, hey, let's go watch all these movies. So I haven't seen Dog Day Afternoon yet, but I really want to. There's a number of Sidney Lumet's movies now that I want to see, but I did watch Running on Empty. And Carolyn, you had mentioned this a bunch. We were supposed to watch it together, and then I just did it without you.
Yeah.
And it's like, I didn't know what it was about, and it's such a fascinating premise that I immediately got hooked on, where it's, this family who, actually, I don't know how much I should say that's spoilers, but, it's a family that kind of has to is on the run.
Yes.
Right? It's a family on the run for very interesting reasons that deeply resonate with me. And I think I enjoyed the movie, but here's what happened.
Uh-oh.
I took an edible.
Oh.
And it I knew that these edibles were a little too much for me, but it's fine. So by the time it really kicked in was near the latter half of the movie where it was really these great speeches were happening and these great moments. And so I can't remember if it was good or not, because my brain was just whoa, this is so deep, man. I was so high.
So I have not seen Running on Empty in many years. I want to revisit it, but I think it is a tremendous film and a real good example of Sidney Lumet's skills as a director, who I think he has a kind of an often an understated approach that really just lets the characters and the emotions and the float to the surface. There is, for instance, in Running on Empty, a birthday scene that is, I think, one of the for me, one of the great scenes in American cinema, because it is so, I don't even know how to describe it, why I love it so much, but it is so, it's so intimate. The emotions are so warm in this family. And there's this undercurrent of sadness because of, the circumstances that Anita alluded to. And just there's just this, it just, the emotion just absolutely comes off of the screen to envelop you, the viewer. What
What
also
I found
a really great film in my
yeah. I mean,
opinion.
I feel like I really liked it.
Yeah, sure.
But I obviously want to go watch it again sober. I also was so like the subject matter. I was so taken by it because it felt so like I want more of this.
So yeah,
like I want more story. Like, and I know that I can't say what it's about. So like, if you know what it's about, but like, it just made me want like a little bit more of like, behind the curtains of people's, like the complexity of people's lives and the choices that they make and how it affected their lives. And like in these deep sort of political ways.
Yeah.
And this movie struck me. Like it struck me about that.
Absolutely.
Which makes sense for the time it came out.
Yeah. And I think we can say like one of the things that characterized Lumet's work, I mean, not every film necessarily, but he was he was a political, like he is a filmmaker who had a political ethos of his own. I mean, from everything from 12 Angry Men to, Running on Empty, he has a film called Q&A, which stars Nick Nolte as like the most just absolutely unsavory, horrible, gross, horrifying, like corrupt cop I have maybe ever seen in a film. He absolutely had a point of view about like life and America and what it means to be a moral, human being that comes through in his films. And I think that's worth acknowledging as well.
Please.
I was just going to say, I have not seen the film, but one of the things that's interesting to me is that it was written by Naomi Foner. And I hate when people do this, and yet I'm going to do this. Naomi Foner, Oscar-nominated screenwriter, used to be married to Eric Foner, who is, like, I didn't know they were married, who is just a preeminent historian of Reconstruction, American history, but also is the mother of Maggie and Jake Gyllenhaal.
Oh my God.
Whoa.
Like, I hate when people do this to very accomplished women and they're like, oh, well, she's married to and she's the mother of whatever.
Yeah,
but like that particular pairing, I was like, okay, this is blowing my mind.
This is why I'm freaking out because we're going to talk about RoboCop next week, and the woman, like the lady cop woman, I was like
Nancy Allen.
I was like, is
from
that
Carrie?
Maggie Gyllenhaal's mother? Like and I had to like look this whole thing up because I'm like, I think the Gyllenhaals come from like a
it's a dynasty.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that is so funny. I guess it's only funny to me, but I just spent all of this time watching RoboCop, being like, is that her mom? Because she looks a hell of a lot like her.
Don't you remember her from being in Carrie?
No.
You didn't recognize Nancy Allen, who we just talked about in Carrie last week?
Oh, that's why she looked familiar.
Yeah.
I'm
amazing,
terrible. Fire me.
I have to mention this. Now very, very quickly. So there's an amazing, I guess it's a TikTok that, so Ebony, I originally found it through Ebony's Twitter, but there's an amazing TikTok of like this band or this young guy, I don't know, singing a song about like nepotism in Hollywood, right? Oh, right. And at one point in the song, he talks about like he actually mentions like Maggie and Jake being like among all the like rich kids who are now Hollywood stars, right? And at one point he says in the song something like, I'm going to botch the lyrics, but it's something like when I check on Wikipedia and your mom's name is Blue, it really makes me go, oh God, not you too. It doesn't mean that your art isn't good. It just means you never have to worry about rent ever. And anyway, so like, and I just had that experience. I'm watching Hacks right now, and I looked up the young actor on Hacks who's playing the lead, against Jean Smart, and her mom's name is Blue on Wikipedia. It's a famous person who I knew of before. And anyway, it's like can we get more like working class? Yeah. I mean, more working class people in Hollywood, please. More people who don't come from like existing show business families to be like writers and actors and directors and stars, because that would be, I think that ties into some of the problems we were talking about earlier too, about remakes and everything, just telling the same old stories and stuff. And we really need some outside perspectives and blood and everything. So yeah.
I just remembered I do have a freak out, like a real one.
Have
y'all seen the video, the Lindas, the like?
Oh yeah,
yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yo, we're gonna link this shit. I think I was like, I was just so gleeful watching this. This is a young Latinx and Asian punk band that was showcased at the Los Angeles Public Library, which shout out to our fucking public library, man. And they're like, they're just quintessentially like riot girl spirit, bringing the anti-patriarchy, anti-white supremacy to like full on punk band. Like they were like, this kid at school was being racist towards Chinese people, which is me. And then we wrote this song about it. Fuck those people. Like, fuck that boy. And like wrote a song about how racist this kid in his class was. And it's like, yo, it's amazing. It like blew, I mean, it blew my mind.
What are they like, 13, 14?
I don't know, man.
They're so adorable, but they fucking rip. Let's say that right now.
Yes,
they
it was
rip,
like
right?
actually good. Like it wasn't
so
just like, it's not just like we're like, oh, these young people who are, you know, making music that's like, you know, anti-racism music. It's like, no, this literally would have been a band I listened to when I was growing up.
Yeah, and apparently they opened for Bikini Kill at a past show. So love that for them. Love that for them. And the refrain where they're like, jerk face. And like, it's just so young and, oh my God, the Linda Lindas. I think they just got signed to a major record deal. So love that for them.
Oh, God. Okay. Yes. Go check that out if you haven't already because it's good. Hey, we love when you submit Freak Out, so please do. And you can do that at feministfrequency.com/freakout. That's FREQOUT. Thanks so much for listening to Feminist Frequency Radio. Join us next week when we'll be talking about the 80s classic, RoboCop. Our show is engineered by Rob Parra. Carrie Simpson provides technical support, artwork by Jamie Varon, and our intro music is by Phil Circus. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.